Hello everyone, my name is Bethany and welcome back to another video. Today I'm telling you about all the books I read in July. So partway through the month I had only read like 20 books or something, and I was like, wow, this is really not going to be as big of a month. I ended up reading 43, which is not as many as last month or the month before. So we're on a good path. I'm happy. Some really bad books, some really good books. I'm excited to tell you about all of them. A lot of them I don't have with me because I borrowed them from work. So as usual, there will be pictures on the screen, but let's get started. And I'm actually just gonna go in the order that I read them this time. I normally try to organize them by rating, but I always end up missing something because I can't read. So I'm just gonna go in order. It's fine. The first book I read is My Contrary Mary by the Lady Janies. It's like a group of writers. This is the first book in their Mary series, which is like a companion to their Jane series. So they follow like historical figures named Jane and now Mary. This one was about Mary Queen of Scots. I loved the show Reign, and I have like a fixation on Mary Queen of Scots in general. So I really enjoyed reading this. They're super funny, and they're not like cringy funny. They're actually funny. So I gave this one 4 stars. It was fun. I pictured the actresses from Reign the whole time. It's a little forgettable, if I'm being honest. This was the first book I read this month, so it was a while ago, but pretty good. Maybe 3.5 would be better considering how much I've forgotten. And then next I read The Wedding Party by Jasmine Guillory. This is from a series of companion romances that I read when I really don't want to put a single thought in my head. Like they're just fluff that's like very average. I feel like a lot of adult romances make me cry, but these ones are just like one and done, you know? So I usually give them 3.5 stars. This one I did actually give 4. It was fun. This follows, oh yeah, okay. So Maddie and Theo hate each other for some stupid reason, and then they end up being in like a bridal party together, so they have to be friends and they end up having a secret relationship. It was just fun, and I liked the characters more than I liked most of the other ones, so it's good. And also it's so pretty. My first 5-star read of the month, I don't have my ARC with me, but it was Apples Never Fall by Leanne Moriarty. This is an ARC, comes out in, I believe, September. I'll put the date on the screen. But this follows a family in Australia. The mother goes missing, and then you're basically trying to figure out what happened. Did someone kill her? Did she just disappear? You really like dive into the psyches of all the family members, and it was so good. I talked about it a lot more in my Books That Made Me Cry video, but I loved it. I already want to reread it. It was so good. Can't wait for it to come out. I also finished up my read of The Lunar Chronicles with Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. This is like a collection of novellas / short stories in the world of The Lunar Chronicles, and I loved it. I'm like very attached to The Lunar Chronicles now. They're so good. Some of these were better than others, but a lot of them like really broke my heart because I'm attached to the characters and you get like more of their backstory. So yeah, I'm thrilled that I read The Lunar Chronicles last month, and I guess this month. I don't know how to sit like a normal person. The next one I read was an ARC, Iron Widow by Shiran J. Zhao. I'm going to look up how to pronounce that. I apologize. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I think it could have been perfect if the world was described a little bit better, but I'll give you the plot first. Can't remember the characters' names because I'm terrible with names. But basically it's like a futuristic / alternate world where, with like these big robot fighters. That's not a good description. Basically, girls are conscripted to be like cannon fodder, basically, in this high-tech army. And this girl's sister died, and she's trying to get revenge. So it's very feminist, very powerful. There's a polyamorous relationship, which was really cool. It just was so fast-paced. I do think I couldn't picture the world at all, hence why I can't really describe it to you, I guess. But I loved it. I can't wait for it to come out. I think it was really good, and I feel like maybe it'll be expanded on in the next book, you know? I also read Sisters of the Snake by Serena and Sasha Nanua. I really wanted to like this one, but I gave it a 3-star. It was just really long and kind of boring. I just didn't connect with it at all. It's kind of like The Prince and the Pauper, so it follows a poor girl and a princess who look identical. So they end up switching places. It was good. It was just like, you know, I was just reading it to read it. I also read The Fountains of Silence by Rita Sepetys. I don't know if I just wasn't in a historical fiction mood. I did give this a 4 stars because I could tell that it was good, but I just wasn't quite in the right mood to get into it. I think I would have liked it a lot more if I was. But this is set during the dictatorship of General Franco in Spain, which is 1957. So there's an American boy, Daniel, who's in Spain, and a girl named Anna who lives in Spain. So it kind of follows how they live under the regime and how their like lives differ because of where they're from. It was a lot deeper and like more complex than Rita Sepetys' other books, I think, and not necessarily in a way that I liked. It was good. It just didn't it wasn't my favorite. I also reread Home Before Dark by Riley Sager because I wanted to be scared. This is a horror / mystery, I guess, following a girl whose family lived in a haunted house when she was younger. Her dad wrote a book about it. They left screaming after like 14 days or something, and now she's back to figure out what's happening in the house. I really still liked it the second time through. Of course, it's a little hard to reread like a haunted house book when you know the ending, but I did love it. I feel like this got me into scary books, so it is precious to me. I gave it 5 stars, but sentimental reread, you know? I also read Mortal Fire by Elizabeth Knox. So she wrote the Dream Hunter duet, which I've never heard anyone talk about, but I loved as a kid. And this is set in the same world. So it follows a girl named Canny, who they live in like an alternate New Zealand kind of. And she goes on a like research trip with her brother and his girlfriend and ends up discovering this like magical valley. I did not know what was happening about 75% of the time, but I still really liked reading it, if that makes sense. So I don't know if I was supposed to know what was going on or not, but I really liked it and I gave it 4 stars. And I would definitely recommend her Dream Hunter books. They're so good. I also read Lips Touched 3 Times by Laini Taylor, which has the most horrendous cover and title I've ever seen, but it's by Laini Taylor, and of course I loved it. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. It's 3 stories about like a girl's first kiss, but they're almost like a paranormal romance. But that sounds lame, but Laini Taylor makes it cool, you know? Like I said, there's 3 stories. The first 2 were incredible. I loved them. This third one was just like a little long and confusing and weird. So that's why I gave it 4.5 stars, because I didn't like that one. But there's illustrations from her husband. They are the best pair. My cat just like flopped in a sunbeam. Yeah, Laini Taylor supremacy. I also read The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. I read it borrowed from work, and then I got my Illumicrate copy, which is so pretty. I gave this a 4.5 stars, and in hindsight, I'm going to give it a 5 because it like stuck with me. This is based on Hungarian and Jewish mythology, and it's set in like a creepy woodsy world. Evike, I think is her name. I don't know how to pronounce it actually, but she is sacrificed by her pagan village to the kingdom, basically, and then she goes on a journey with the guard who came to get her. It is like a romance, but it was super dark, super creepy, really well done. The world building was awesome, so I would definitely recommend this one. Another arc I read was The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gould. This is like a YA horror, I guess, and I think it comes out in like 2 days. So it's probably already out by the time this video is up. I gave this one 4 stars. It was super quick and really fun to read. There is a sapphic romance in it, which a lot of people thought came out of nowhere. I didn't really think that. I expected like a little bit more twists and turns. I got to the end and I was like, oh, okay. But I still really enjoyed reading it. So another 5-star read was The Daughters of Sparta by Claire Haywood. This was so good. It broke my heart. I wrote down a whole bunch of quotes from it. Hi. It follows Helen and her sister Clytemnestra. I don't know. But they are the princesses of Troy, and they each get married off. We all know how Helen's story ends, but I didn't know how her sister's story ended. Now I do. I never really know how accurate these are, but I don't really care. You know, I'm reading them for fiction. So yeah, 5 stars. I adored this. I kind of wish I had gotten it in hardcover, but it's only like in our stores in paperback, so I would really recommend this if you're into Greek mythology, which I know all of you are. I also read Heartstopper Volume 2. So good, so cute. This is just a super cute graphic novel romance. 5 stars. Ooh, we're on a streak. The next 2 books are also 5 stars. So I read Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This is the first book in the Trials of Morrigan Crow series. So good. This is like everything the middle grade should be. It reminded me of Amari and the Night Brothers. It follows a girl named Morgan who's cursed to die on her 11th birthday. Yeah. And then a man named Jupiter North appears and whisks her way to this magical world. It was so good. I had heard so many people say it was amazing, and I was nervous that I was like hyping it up, but no, it was perfect. Read it. And then I read The Raven Boys, which I annotated. I had read this, I think, like 8 years ago or something, and it was okay, but I was more into like fast-paced stories back then that were like very plot-driven. This is absolutely not plot-driven. It's very character and setting-driven, which is more what I'm into now. So I really did like this one. Pretty sure everyone knows what it's about at this point. Yeah, I'm really excited to continue with the series. Okay, next up I read Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. This, I'm not like super into YA contemporaries in general, but this one was sent to me by the publisher. So I decided to read it. I also read it like half just before I left for a wedding and half the morning after a wedding. So I was all like, oh, love is real, you know. It was super cute. It follows a girl named Evie who doesn't believe in love anymore because she saw her dad cheat on her mom. So she's like given it up on it completely. And then she randomly develops this power where she can see how people's love stories will end. So that kind of makes her simultaneously more hopeful and more scared of love. She ends up falling in love, of course. It's like a lot deeper than I expected it to. I almost cried at the end. Not quite, but you know, I felt emotional. So I would definitely read this. It's super quick too. Luna's just lying in a sunbeam with her head like up like this. Relatable. I read The Chariot at Dusk by Swati Teerdala. The first book in the series, The Tiger at Midnight, is like a cat and mouse guard and assassin romance, and I gave it 5 stars. And then book 2 was 3 stars, and book 3 was also 3 stars, and I'm really sad. I just think that then the world and the plot never got bigger than in book 1. Like, we already knew everything that was going to happen in book 1, so they felt very like slow and repetitive because nothing was new. They're so pretty. I'm going to keep them on my shelves, but I'm only ever going to reread the first one, which I'm sad about. Very randomly for me, I read Julie Andrews's memoirs. Yeah. The first volume is called Home and the second volume is called Homework. I love this woman. I would die for her. I feel like a lot of people picture her as like growing up very posh because she seems so classy. But she had like a really rough childhood, so it was very interesting to read about. In this, you get a lot of like insight into The Sound of Music and a lot of other movies that I haven't seen because I'm not really into like classic cinema. So if this had been about anyone else, I would have thought it was really boring. But because it's about Julie Andrews, I gave it 5 stars. They're so much fun. I love her. She's the best. I have such an attachment to The Sound of Music, so 5 stars. The publisher also sent me Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, so I whipped through this in like a day and a half. I actually have not read anything else by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm very excited to, but I decided to pick this one up first because I wanted to. This follows a family in Malibu in the 80s. They're all like surfer chicks, whatever. You just know that the house is going to burn down by the end of the party. You don't know why or how. It was a lot quicker than I thought it was going to be because it looks pretty long, but I flew through it. Every chapter is pretty short and you follow a lot of different perspectives. I felt very attached and interested in all of the characters. It was good. It wasn't like life-changing good, but it was pretty good, so I gave it 4 stars. This is also very random. This is a collection of short stories by Curtis Sittenfeld called You Think It, I'll Say It. I love Prep and Sisterland by Curtis Sittenfeld, and Rodham, actually. So I bought this because it was on sale, and I love her. So I don't usually like short stories, like I've said, but these were really good. I've talked about Curtis Sittenfeld before, but she just has a way of like, she says things from the perspective of a character that you're like, oh my God, do other people feel that way? Like, it's so interesting, and she like really makes her characters sympathetic and horrible at the same time. Like, you see the best of yourself and the worst of yourself in them. So I gave this one 4 stars because it was short story, so I didn't connect with it as much as I might have like a full-length novel, but I love her. I also read The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan, which I gave 3 stars. This is the first book in the Kane Chronicles series, which is based on Egyptian mythology. It was just very average, just lacked something. I don't know. I love Egyptian mythology. They do a lot of like cool traveling in here. It sounds like everything I would like, but I just was not into it, and I couldn't tell you why. It's very long. I picked up Beach Read by Emily Henry after reading, sobbing, and loving People We Meet on Vacation last month. This one was not quite as good. There's a lot of books this month that I'm just like, meh, but I still gave 4 stars because they were like good, you know? I just didn't connect to the characters as much as I did in People We Meet on Vacation. There was nothing about them that I like really specifically related to. But this is a romance following Augustus, who is a literary fiction author, and then January, who writes romance, and they end up switching genres for the summer. Luna, you're so cute. I have to go see her. Anyway, sorry, she's so precious. I think that was it. Yeah, this one just didn't like hit me. Ooh, then I read XOXO by Axio. This is like a K-pop inspired romance. This girl ends up in South Korea for the summer and has a romance with a K-pop star. It was so much fun, and the naked cover, like under the dust jacket, is beautiful, so make sure you look at that. I'm not into K-pop, but I really liked this, so I'm excited to maybe get into it. I don't know. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this. It was so good. I gave it 4.5 stars. Really switching gears, and then I read Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is not as intimidating as it looks. There's like a lot of empty space around the pages, so it's long, but it's not that long. If you read Kingdom of Ash, you can read this. So this is a standalone fantasy novel following like a very expansive world. The world is very well built. There are dragons, there is a sapphic romance. I don't really know where to start with the plot. Anyway, you follow 2 main perspectives with like a couple side ones that I didn't care as much about. But I loved Tane and Eid. I think that's how you pronounce their names. That's how I said them in my head. 5 stars. Would definitely recommend listening to this while you listen to this playlist that Samantha Shannon made for this book. It's so good. I'm very glad that I read this. Next up is Sky Without Stars by Jessica Brody and Joanne Rendell. This is a retelling of Les Mis in space. The first book, this one, very much is just Les Mis. So like I knew everything that was going to happen, you know? The names are obviously like a little bit changed, but it's pretty clear. I enjoyed it. I love Les Mis. I was fully picturing all the songs while reading this book, so maybe that's why I enjoyed it. I don't think it needed to be quite this long, which is why I gave it 4 stars, but I'm excited to continue with the series. Another 5 stars, All Our Hidden Gifts by Caroline O'Donoghue. First of all, can we talk about this cover? Perfect, beautiful, we love it. This is set in Ireland is it historical? No, they have phones and stuff. Anyway, the main character's name is Maeve. A lot of reviews said that she was unlikable and stupid, and I found her very relatable, as usual. Her ex-best friend goes missing after like something that she does with tarot cards, the main character, and she is trying to find her. There's a romance with a genderqueer character, which was really interesting to read about. It was very spooky. I wasn't expecting there to be like a fantastical paranormal element in here, but there was. I really loved this. I also read The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker, which I really adored. This is set in like an ordinary town in California, and suddenly this sleeping sickness goes around. It's like perpetual sleep, and it really ravages the whole town. There's quarantines, etc. Didn't really realize it was going to be so like pandemic focused, but that's fine. The writing was beautiful. It was very compelling. I think that a lot of people wouldn't like this, and I would totally understand why. It's very like you never really dive into any specific character. You just get like a broad overview of a lot of different characters in the town, and I thought it worked. So I read The Brightest Night by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is book 3 in the Origin series, which I thought was a trilogy. And then I got to like page 450 out of 500, and I was like, this is not getting wrapped up. There's no final battle or whatever. So I really was only reading this to finish the series, and I don't think I'll be continuing. They just drag on. Like, this did not need to be 500 pages. I don't think this book even needed to exist. Yeah, I'm over it. But for plot, this is like a companion to the Lux series, so I can't really tell you the plot actually without spoiling the Lux series. Go read that first, I guess, but I probably wouldn't bother with these. So I'm reading the Mistborn trilogy. I just read The Well of Ascension, which is the second book. So now obviously I only have the third book left, and I just got it spoiled for me, and I'm very upset about it. So I will be reading it, but I'm very mad. The second book, though, I really loved. I gave it 5 stars. They're really long, but I find they go really quickly, and they're so well done. Like, I remember everything about them, even after I read them, which is rare. So this follows a girl named Vin, who... It's pretty tropey. Like, she discovers that she has magical powers. She's got like a mentor who helps her to become the chosen one, you know. But it works for me. I really like them. I'm excited for the third book, I guess. I also read The Switch by Beth O'Leary, which was my last Beth O'Leary book to read. This follows a girl named Lena and her grandma Eileen, who like swap lives basically. So Eileen lives in rural Yorkshire and Lena lives in like high-powered central London. So they are both having life problems and they swap. Lena's plot, the young girl, was not very interesting. I didn't really care about her that much, if I'm being honest. But Eileen's was excellent. It was very different. Like, I don't normally read about 80-year-olds falling in love, but it was super sweet, very like, just very different. I liked that part, so I gave it 4 stars because it was like half really good, half okay. Not my favorite Beth O'Leary book for sure. The other 2 were 5 stars, but I still really enjoyed it. And I read Wings of Shadow by Nikki Paupetto, which is the 3rd book in the Crown of Feathers series, my beautiful Owl Crate edition. I love this series. It's definitely like younger YA because there's very clear lines between like good and evil. Like, it's not very complicated at all. It's just like good versus evil, basically. The ending was actually very emotional and really good. So I was thinking this one was going to be more of a 4.5, and then I loved the ending. I would definitely recommend this trilogy, especially if you were a fan of Tamora Pierce, like I was when you were younger. Follows Phoenix Riders. It's got a really complex sister relationship, and I loved it. I read another memoir because I found an arc at work and it looked interesting. It's called Beautiful Country, and I really liked it. It follows a girl. She moves from China with her mom, I think when she's like 7, and they grow up undocumented in extreme poverty. Lots of super heartbreaking things. Yeah, she is now super successful, lives in Canada. Awesome life. So it was really interesting to read, and I'm glad that I did. I have been looking for my next favorite thriller/mystery, and I found it with 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. This is like very meta and complicated. It follows a guy named Malcolm who owns a crime bookstore, and an FBI agent comes to him because someone is committing murders based on a list that he wrote of like the 8 best murders in crime fiction. Very twisty, very turny. Lots that I probably have forgotten already, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. I thought it was really well done. Like, I never got to a twist where I was like, okay, stupid, like I have been doing with a lot of thrillers lately. I've heard less good things about most of his other books, I think, but I do have a couple on my shelf to read. But I love this one. Okay, we're in the home stretch. So next I read The Passing Playbook by Isaac Fitzsimons, again sent to me by the publisher, which is why I like bumped up the priority list, even though it's YA contemporary. This follows a trans boy named Spencer who transfers to a new school kind of for like a fresh start, but he wants to join the soccer team, and turns out there's an issue with his birth certificate. So there was a lot of really complicated issues in it. A pretty good romance. I found it was a little hard to root for the other character in the romance. I think if we'd gotten his perspective, it might have been a little easier. But it's really short, so I read this really quickly, and I did like it a lot, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I reread Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin in preparation for Gods and Monsters, which I'm so excited to read this month. This is the second book in the Serpent and Dove series, which follows a witch and a witch hunter who have to get married. I just feel like this book really just changed some of the characters in random ways. Like, every time they do something, I was like, what? And the magic system just like suddenly is different. So I don't love it, but I do still really like the characters. So like I said, I'm excited for book 3, but this one is a 3-star compared to the 5 stars of the first one. I'm hoping this doesn't go the same way as Tiger at Midnight did. I also DNF'd a book, Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton. I was in the mood for her like gothic historical mystery kind of vibe. If you don't know who Kate Morton is, she writes like, there's intersecting timelines. There's always like a mysterious house where there was possibly a murder. They're very like complicated and lots of different things happening. This one is like one of her worst reviewed, and I agree. It was just so long, and they kept like, I would just be getting interested in the story, and then it would throw in this totally new perspective and time, and I'm like, who are you? I don't care. So it was fine. It wasn't fine. I DNF'd it. I thought it was bad. Ooh, and then I read This Cruel Design by Emily Suvada. So this is the second book in the This Mortal Coil series. I gave the first one 4 stars, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. This is how you do a book 2. So Blood and Honey and The Tiger at Midnight book 2. Take notes. It just like really upped the stakes. There was a lot of plot twists, but none of them like discounted what happened in book 1. This is set in a world where there's been like this zombie plague type thing. And they're trying to figure out how to get the world back to normal, basically. So we love the pandemics. But yeah, I loved book 2. I'm super excited for book 3. Then I read Gearbreakers by Zoe Hana-Makuta. I gave this one 2.5 stars. It's very similar to Iron Widow. Like, it follows these people who are like attached to these big giant robot fighter things, which sounds so weird. And then there's also in this book, like the Gearbreakers who are trying to destroy them. I just felt it was very underdeveloped. Like, I think there could have been a whole nother book before the start, because we really just were thrown into it with no context, and like, I didn't care about the characters yet. It just was weird. Next, I read Small Favors by Erin A. Craig, which I loved. I gave this 4.5 stars, but I think it might be a 5, because the issues that I had with it were really small. This is like a YA horror-ish book set in a small town called Amity Falls, which kind of reminded me of like an Amish community a little bit, but like in an alternate world. So there start to be like some weird things going on. Animals are mutating, like seasons are getting thrown off. There's these murders by animals, ? It was very good. I could not stop reading. I wanted to know what was happening. It was very compelling, and I loved it. And I am now like sure that I love Erin A. Craig, because I liked House of Salt and Sorrows, but I feel like you need to read 2 books to decide. Okay, 2 more, and then I really need to leave. So The Perfect Nanny by Leila Slimani. I randomly picked this up because I wanted to read a thriller of some sort. This is set in Paris. I don't know if it's translated or not. It felt like it might have been. But it follows this couple and their nanny. It was super weird, very interesting, very dark. It took me maybe an hour to read. And I liked it, and that's all I have to say. The last book I read this month was so good. The World Gives Way by Marissa Levian. So this is set in our future, basically. The world has ended, but before it ended, we built this like ship, but it's very big, and there's like basically a world in it. There's an atmosphere. There's like all different countries and stuff like that. I don't know exactly how big it is, but you don't actually know that it's a spaceship until you're like a little bit into the story, or maybe you would if you'd read the description. It follows a girl named Mira, who's like a contracted servant, because in this world, rich people got to go on the ship, of course, but you could like sell yourself into servitude to get onto the ship. And this girl is like a descendant of one of those people. So she works for a family. They kill themselves because there is a crack in the ship and they're all going to die anyway. So it's so interesting. It was like The Handmaid's Tale plus like some really good apocalypse movie. It was so good. I read the last like 10 pages on my break at work and cried and had to go back to work, which was not fun, but just had so many interesting commentaries on humanity and everything. Oh, I loved it. Can't recommend it enough. Need to have it on my shelves. Okay, my voice is so tired and I need to leave now, so I'm gonna go. But thank you for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books. If you disagree with my underdeveloped opinions, that's fine. And I'll see you next month.